Good morning and good afternoon to all of our participants. Thank you so much for joining us. It's my great pleasure to welcome you today to today's webinar, 100% Renewable Energy, a Reality Across the World. This webinar is being held by the International Renewable Energy Agency in partnership with the Global 100% Renewable Energy campaign. For those of you who are not familiar with IRENA, we are an intergovernmental agency that supports countries in their transition to a sustainable energy future. IRENA has 135 member countries and more than 35 countries in the process of becoming members. The Global 100% Renewable Energy campaign was founded by partners from civil society, industry, science, and policy and was launched in April 2013. The campaign aims to build a global alliance for 100% renewable energy and prove that being powered by 100% sustainable renewable energy is urgent and achievable. Before we begin, we would like to share a quick note that IRENA does not endorse or recommend specific products or services shared within its webinar series. Information in this webinar is featured in the IRENA Renewable Energy Learning Partnership database as just one of many best practice case studies. If you are interested in finding out about future webinars offered through the IRENA webinar series, please visit the IRENA Renewable Energy Learning Partnership website and sign up for our weekly newsletter to receive updates about courses, webinars, and internship opportunities in the sector. For today's webinar, we have two options for listening in. You may connect by computer by selecting mic and speakers, or by phone by selecting telephone on the right-hand pane. If you should face any technical difficulties during the webinar, please contact the GoToWebinar help desk at the number provided on your screen. We will be collecting questions throughout the webinar and we'll have a question and answer period following the presentations from our panelists. I would like to encourage you all to participate and ask questions by selecting the questions pane in the right bar. Lastly, if you would like to watch this webinar again or share it with a friend, we will have a full recording available on the IRELP website as well as on the IRENA YouTube channel. And if you are not able to answer have your questions answered during today's webinar session and you wish to connect with our panelists, I encourage you to visit the IRENA community and join the discussion on 100% renewable energy. So to quickly review the agenda for today's session, I will begin by introducing our four panelists who we are very lucky to have with us today. Following this, I will hand the floor over to our panelists for their presentations. At the end of the session, we will have a question and answer period, and then we will ask that you participate in a quick feedback survey to help us improve our webinar series. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists. Our first speaker today will be Stefan Zanger, who is an executive committee member of the Global 100% Renewable Energy Campaign and the Secretary General of the World Wind Energy Association. Second, we will hear from Pia Bushman, who works with the Competence Network for Distributed Energy Technologies, where she coordinates an initiative on 100% renewable energy for rural communities. We are also joined by Anna Leitreiter, who works as the Policy Officer for Climate and Energy at the World Future Council. In her main capacity, she works on enabling policy frameworks for a global transition towards 100% renewable energy. And last but not least, we will hear from Nicholas Wagner, who works with the International Renewable Energy Agency in the Innovation and Technology Center. Nicholas is part of the Remap team, who are creating a plan to double the share of renewable energy in the world's energy mix by 2030. I hope you all enjoy the webinar, and with that, I would like to hand the floor to Mr. Zanger.
Hello. Yes, hello. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Can you hear me now? That seems
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
So it's okay. Very good. Thank you. So as a first speaker, yeah, I have to try this. So thank you very much, Stephanie, for introducing us. Thank you very much for Irina for hosting this webinar. It's a pleasure to see that we have so many people already online here interested in this topic that we see as really a very important topic that should be discussed. So my part as the first speaker today is kind of to introduce the topic and introduce the question, why are we proposing to discuss this topic of 100% renewable energy? There is, of course, many reasons why in general there is a need to go for renewable energy. The first is that humans need energy. They use energy, as you can see from this quite well-known photograph that was taken during the night by NASA. You see that people all over the world, they are using electricity for lighting, of course, that is obvious, but obviously there are quite many dark spots where also many people are living. So obviously the way and the sources that we're using today are not accessible in the same way for people all over the world. That is something that has to be changed, and it's obvious that the current energy system, mainly based on fossil resources, cannot really satisfy the needs of most people. We know very well that the system that is based on burning fuels, on burning resources, creates problems for our environment, in particular for the climate. Currently there's the climate conference going on here in Bonn, where we as World Energy Association are based, and people try to find a solution in governments how to reduce the CO2 emissions and finally concentration in the atmosphere. So it's out of doubt that the CO2 concentration has been increasing dramatically over the last decades, and the question is how we can stop this. We can stop this with emission-free technologies, without doubt. We have many other environmental problems that are related with burning coal, burning oil, gas, also using nuclear power. As we know, the picture you can see on the left, that's another problem that is not mentioned so often, but it's just normal air pollution. You can see this is China, where the air quality is, of course, on many days now just terrible. Nuclear disaster, we know what happened in Japan. That's something that's not really necessary to take such a risk. And the picture on the right, you see that is coal mining in Germany. It's not so far from where my office is. It's a huge destruction of the landscape that can never really be recovered. And the question is that really necessary? Can we not use the wind, the sun that is available there? Another problem that we can see is, of course, economics and financial aspect behind the fossil, also nuclear energy industry. You see over the last 15 years here, the price volatility of fossil resources, it's the oil price here. So this up and down in itself is a problem. So if you are somewhere here, you cannot really predict what will be the oil price in the future. So just the last 5 years, the oil price had a maximum of close to $150 and a minimum of less than $30. That is a real problem because people cannot really predict. When you look at, you install a solar panel today, you know what the price of your electricity will be over the lifetime of this project. That's a very clear advantage. So the key drivers of a 100% a full renewable energy supply, as we can see, is first, renewable energy are available. And everywhere they offer a secure and domestic energy supply. They are environmentally sustainable, and they are affordable, and they are low risk in particular. They are low risk in financial terms, but they're also low risk in terms of the environmental hazards, the damage that can be done to the environment and also to humans. So the big question is, why has there not been more progress in the past years? We know that some countries have had good progress, but other countries are still quite behind. And in global terms, the growth rates are not still where we want them to be. So we had such a discussion also during one of the UN climate change conferences. It was in Doha at the so-called COP18, where we presented examples on the local level, on the regional level of 100% communities, and came up the proposal that this should become the mainstream of the discussion, how to solve climate change mitigation problems. So let's focus on the solutions. So we decided together with many partners to come up with a global campaign to prove that it is possible, showing examples where it has been achieved. What is 100% renewable energy? A quick answer to this is I like this word, it's a symphony of all the renewables that we have. It's a symphony of solar energy, of wind power, of geothermal energy, bioenergy, hydropower. They must be used together, there is no doubt. Each of them has its pros and cons, but together they can, without doubt, supply the world's energy needs. So we've set up this campaign, as it was already mentioned last year, with 3 main goals. The first is that we're aiming at a 100% renewable energy supply worldwide. It means a fossil nuclear-free society. This leads us to the main principle that we suggest that new investment from now on should only be in renewable energy, no other new investment. That means that, of course, we still have, some people have still their cars and all this, so this doesn't have to be abolished overnight, but whenever you are thinking about new power stations, etc., it should be in renewable energy. That's technically possible, also economically feasible. And thirdly, it must be based on a kind of bottom-up process, because we can see that on the local level it actually works today, that people can, in many villages around the world, harvest renewable energy in their environment, which gives also more power to the people in these rural but also urban environments. They can decide about the way they want to harvest energy and use it, make it usable. Is there a scarcity of renewable energy? That's still a question some people may ask, but that is very obvious. No, there is no scarcity. So I am from the Wind Association, so I want to just give you just a rough idea of the wind potential, referring to a study that was done by Stanford University. Stanford University made a calculation based on actual wind measurements, so they came to the conclusion that if you only take the sites with only onshore sites with a wind speed of more than 7 meters per second at 80 meters, that is enough if you only take 20% of the sites to cover completely the world's energy demand. So there are many sites with lower wind speeds than that are also used today. In addition to that, we have also offshore sites today. So just wind energy, without doubt, could satisfy the world's energy need. As I said, that's not what we're proposing, but wind is certainly a very nice success story. So far, we have installed now, at the end of 2013, close to 320 gigawatt, which covers around 4% of the global electricity demand. 4% may not sound that much, but we have some countries like Denmark with 1/3 of its electricity now coming from wind, Spain also with more than 20%, Portugal, Ireland, Germany, countries with double-digit shares already. How to come to 100%, how to make use of these potentials, that's the big question that, of course, especially I think the next 2 speakers will refer to. But again, let me answer that. The main question and the main answer to this is we must find a symphony of the renewables, a good combination of the different renewable energy types to cover all the needs, not only in power, that's certainly where wind is very, very good, also in solar energy, which can directly be used for heating, bioenergy, which has the advantage that it can be stored easily, similar with hydropower, and geothermal energy. So if we make use, in addition of the benefits of 100% renewable energy, and there are so many benefits, I try to refer to the disadvantages of a non-renewable power system or energy system. So we have significant emission reduction. It means we have practically, in general, we have a no emission system. We have energy access for many more people. We have more empowerment of the local sector. The rural environment will benefit greatly from it. We have more opportunities on the local level. We have new jobs. We can see also that renewable energy creates many more jobs than the conventional power sector. There's a more healthy environment. We have a more resilient energy infrastructure. Just looking at the current conflicts we have in the world, much of this is related to energy access. In Ukraine, the big discussion, just what we heard today, is about how Ukraine can get enough gas, how Europe Union can get enough gas from Russia. That might not be necessary in the future because we can use the resources that we have and not import. A very good success story, without doubt, is Denmark, and you see here the screenshot of the Danish grid operator that was beginning of this year, where Denmark at that point of time covered 100% of its power demand from wind energy. Denmark has gone one step further, so this not only refers to power, but they now also have integrated with CHP, combined heat and power production, that a large share of their heat already comes from renewable energy as well, mainly from biomass, which is burned, but also from, if there is an excess of wind, like maybe at this point of time, using the electricity that comes from wind. So there is a smart way of combining these things. This is my kind of introduction to our topic today. I thank you for your attention, and of course also looking forward to your question. With this, I would like to hand over or back first to Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for that amazing presentation. And now we will hand over to Pia for her presentation.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
We see a black screen now.
Okay.
Okay, Pia, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. I think I will strongly connect to the question that was raised already by Stefan, how to reach 100% renewable energy. And here I'd like to take a focus on European countries, because I'm project manager in a European project called Towards 100% RES Communities, and RES standing here for renewable energy sources. One second, please. So first I will begin to give you a small overview how we are trying to support communities and regions in Europe to really take on a dynamic to go towards 100% renewable energy. And then I will highlight some of these dynamics as in terms of two concrete case studies from Germany and from France. Here you can see at the bottom of the slide the partners that are involved in the project, and altogether we have 10 countries taking part here. Some Germany, Austria, Italy, France, Belgium, but also some Eastern European countries like Slovenia, Romania, but also Hungary, Scotland, Czech Republic, so there's a big diversity in this project. And you can see here an overview on the methods and tools that we apply. One important instrument in this project is that we also involve the initiative of Covenant of Mayors, that is particularly addressing local and regional authorities that have voluntarily committed to increase energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy on their territories.
Sorry, Pia, I will just interrupt you for 1 minute. We're still only able to see your title page. We're not following through your slides.
Oh my God, that's not good. I will try it one more time.
Great, we can see now. That's wonderful. Thanks.
I will test now if you can see it also when I move forward to the last slide, because I'm worried that you will just see
Okay.
Can you see now that I'm switching slides?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, you can? Okay, perfect. I'm sorry for that. In the instrument Covenant of Mayors, as I said, local authorities are addressed, and they're supported to implement and evaluate their sustainable energy action plans. And in a project, or in a tool that we call twinning approach, we draw lessons learned from that by looking at 10 specific regions in Europe that we match. They are all from different countries, and on the one hand we have learning regions, and on the other hand we have experienced regions. And in this twinning approach, we have regular study tours and face-to-face meetings where those actors meet and get involved, and also really get strongly inspired by those foreign projects. One other element is the US Champions League, which is a very playful tool in our project. It's an annual competition on renewable energy at European level, where we also help these communities and regions to get recognized internationally and to become visible on an international stage. Another benefit is also that those countries that have newly established a league are pushed a bit to collect more data on renewable energy sources. Another interesting tool is the Wagner network that has established clubs in all those partnering countries, and it's mainly addressing rural communities. And it's helping, on the one hand, to have them engaged in an international European knowledge exchange, but also to be better represented at European level. And the very heart of this project is that we have developed throughout these 3 years a common European definition that states more clearly what makes actually up 100% RES community in Europe. I won't go into very much detail here, but we have come up, by looking at different experiences from Italy, France, and Germany, we have come up with 30 criteria at 4 different levels. And if a community substantially fulfills these criteria, it receives the 100% RES label and a spot on the 100% RES online map. And not all regions that receive the label have already achieved 100% renewable energy. Rather, they show that there is political will to move towards 100% renewable energy, and that they have a certain strategy in place that is underpinned with credible and substantial measures to achieve 100% renewable energy. And in November, the 11th November, there will be a first launching event for this 100% RES label during the 100% Renewable Energy Regions Congress in Kassel in Germany. This brings me to another best practice that I would like to present you from Germany. It's a bottom-up initiative called 100% Renewable Energy Regions. And this is a political concept that was developed by the IDE, the Institute of Decentralized Energy Technologies in Kassel, that was originally funded by the German Environment Ministry, and it's now, since this year, an independently running network. The communities and regions that are part of this network have committed to reach 100% on a regional scale by the next 2, 3, or 4 decades. And you can see here on this slide the geographical distribution of 100% renewable energy regions. Mainly the candidates are rural areas. We have 100% renewable energy regions that are the pioneers, the front runners in this network, which are around 80. But also some starter regions that are still learning about how to achieve this goal. And then we have also a small share of urban areas. And here I'd like to present to you one best practice example at a city level, which is Frankfurt. And usually Frankfurt is known as financial center, but it's more and more known internationally as city of passive houses and for having the most energy efficient office buildings. To mention just in brief some some aspects that make up the strategy of 100% renewable energy. It's important to mention that Frankfurt is heading towards this goal to achieve it by 2050, and an important role plays the cooperation with surrounding areas to meet this 100% renewable energy supply, but also to decrease energy consumption by half. Frankfurt also aims to have, of course, own renewable energy production, and as you saw, they are on a good way to do so. And some technical elements are, of course, energy efficiency, involving the building sector especially, but also to expand the system of combined heat and power, to increase the role of solar, wind, but also the use of local organic waste. And there's another interesting pilot project going on, which is a virtual power plant that should help to adjust for fluctuations in the renewable energy output. Some interesting political elements are that Frankfurt was one of the first cities that had established a climate and energy agency that helped to address the topic of energy and climate in a very holistic way. And of course, another positive aspect was that there was sufficient government funding available, and through this master plan of 400% and the help of the energy agency, there was the possibility to have a strong stakeholder involvement, such as architects, engineers, consultants, local businesses, but also and especially citizens. So here we have a very interesting combination of top-down governance, if you like so, in terms of the master plan, but also a strong bottom-up dynamic coming from the citizens and small businesses. Now I'd like to present you a rural case from France, which is very interesting because the political setting in France is pretty diverse. We have on the one hand a growing focus that was set on the national political agenda to increase energy efficiency and climate protection, which would also call local authorities to play a greater role in this policy. But on the other hand, we haven't really seen a real decentralization taking place. Rather, there was some dialectic development showing that there are coming some regional initiatives getting more involved in this in energy policy and climate protection, but also a strong preservation of the centralized energy system. Let's now move to an excellent example of this growing number of French local renewable energy initiatives. This is Le Menet. It's a community composed of 7 municipalities in the northwest of France. And in brief, the region tries to achieve 100% by 2030. And you can see here on the left-hand side of the slide the current status of renewable energy supply. And what is really unique in this context of Le Menet is that the region very early realized or became aware of a very unique approach to local development. They wanted to really help themselves and empower themselves by addressing all those issues on site: an aging population, nitrogen excess because of the regional pig production and the resulting pig manure, but also a severe lack of economic and social diversity. And the elected officials in the region realized that energy or renewable energy provided really a smart intersection to address these issues and to also activate and unify a diverse set of actors around these projects. And some projects that I would like to mention here are, for example, a collective methane production that was inspired by cases from Germany and Scandinavia that was meant to deal with the nitrogen excess, but that is also now producing heat and electricity for the region. And then another project is the production of fuel oil In this context, there was a farmers' initiative that decided to produce rapeseed oil locally in order to be less dependent on national or international price fluctuations. Another project that is really interesting and inspiring is a participatory wind energy project, where the elected officials also wanted to move against this trend of local wealth going elsewhere, and they really managed to inspire citizens to call for a bigger civic shareholding in a regional wind farm. And this is now it has been a really successful project with 140 people being part of this wind farm today. These projects really help to multiply and encourage other projects. Finally, an important aspect was also the support that was coming from Claire, which is the project coordinator of this project, the European project that I presented in the beginning. Claire helps to make regions in France aware of the great pool of experiences on renewable energy that is already available nationally. So I think these are very important factors that gave a good dynamic for renewable energy development. To sum up, I think really important aspects that can also maybe be provide good dynamic factors for other projects are to have a common goal statement in place, a common vision that is ideally binding in order to establish renewable energy as a long-term political issue. And then also to have a good common identity and a story to identify with, such as local value creation. Then also, of course, it's good to know where you stand, to know the potentials in terms of natural resources that are present on site. Very necessary, of course, it's to have own or external funding, or at least a good knowledge about how to acquire this funding. And as we have seen in Remap, to have multiple competencies and skills, but also actors involved in these projects, and to have a good organization, such as we've seen with Frankfurt and the Energy Agency. And last but not least, it's really good to get connected with other actors, other like-minded actors internationally and nationally. And I think this is a really good point to leave the floor for Anna Leitreiter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pia, for that great presentation. And now I'll hand the floor over to Anna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Pia, and thank you, Irina and Stefan Sänger, for kicking off this webinar. And thanks to all the listeners who are patiently listening and hopefully writing down lots of questions so we can discuss all these interesting topics after another 2 presentations. Yeah, as Pia already mentioned, getting connected, sharing best practices, and making knowledge available for others is very key, and that's why, as Stefan mentioned in the beginning, we have started this global campaign on 100% renewable energy, and we have seen great examples from Pia from Europe, and from 2 countries where, well, Germany, you probably expect that as a pioneer in renewable energy, but France is not known for their great share in renewables. So I just want to highlight with this slide, and I hope you can see my second slide, with the global map where you have lots of dots and numbers that show you just some of the examples globally where 100% renewable energy is already reality today. And there are many countries where probably you wouldn't expect that, but on the local and regional level you see great progress, you see amazing work being done by mayors, by local communities, by citizens, by cooperatives that really take the lead And we have analyzed them, and we have looked into what can we learn from them, and what are their lessons that they want to share with others who are still on the way towards this great success. And we have identified 5 of the key lessons learned that you can see on that slide. And the first one is really making sure that this message is getting out there. Achieving 100% renewable energy can generate significant cost savings. And Stefan mentioned it in the very beginning in his presentation already. It's not only the big, amazing costs, capital costs mainly, that need to be invested, but on the long term, and when I talk about long term, I not mean 50 years, but in a time frame where people can actually work in, we have significant cost savings in all parts of the world. That brings me to the second lessons learned, that 100% renewable energy strategies are not just for wealthiest countries. We see Cape Verde as an island in Africa having set a 100% target and is already well on its way. We see rural areas in Bangladesh setting targets or just moving towards 100% renewable energy because it's cheaper, because it's more affordable for the people. We see villages in India, we see Pacific Islands. So it's not about the wealthiest countries in the global north, but it's actually everywhere in the world where this is happening. We see that transitioning to 100% renewable energy can mitigate risks and make countries more resilient when we have climate change moving, unfortunately, very fast. And transitioning to renewable energy can also, in addition to have significant cost savings, can generate new economic activities, can create new business models, can create jobs, and improve the life quality of people locally, regionally, as we've heard already from Pia. And lastly, achieving a fully 100% renewable energy system will require significant expanding of renewable energy in the heating and cooling sector as well as in the transport sector. So this is a wise lesson from these pioneers that we need to take into account, that we're not only talking about the power sector here, because in many countries transport and heating is actually the sectors where we have most harmful emissions for the environment and for human beings, where we definitely need to act. And fortunately, we have countries like Denmark, countries like Costa Rica, where we can already learn from. So just on one slide to summarize, the future of renewable energy is a fundamental choice and not a foregone conclusion of technological and economic trends. And I think that brings me to the key barriers that we still need to overcome and where we still need to work on very hard together. Even though we know the benefits, we know the opportunities, we still have to prove that we can scale up to 100% renewable energy. We need to turn best practices that we've heard already into best policies, to have policy frameworks enabling to replicate this success. We, in many parts of the world, basically in all parts of the world, we need to manage scarce resources, natural resources, human resources, financial resources. So this obviously requires all of us to work efficiently and to come up with very efficient processes, and we need to work on that. And finally, it all comes down to building political will. So as I said, it's a fundamental choice. It's not a foregone conclusion of the past, and we need our politicians to take that seriously and take up the responsibility to set targets and to make it a reality. And in the work of this 100% renewable energy campaign that we are running with our partners, we have identified strategies to overcome these barriers. And these 5 strategies that you see on this slide here came out of a workshop that we've done with parliamentarians from the European Union in Brussels, where we discussed, okay, how can we really overcome the barrier of building political will? How can we build political will? And yeah, we said, first of all, we need to inform and educate citizens and business leaders about the concrete potential of a 100% renewable energy future. So it's really about education and information. But for that, you obviously need to analyze the cost savings, the environmental benefits, how it improves economic security. So this analysis of each and single reality across the world, where all of you are now sitting in front of your computer, need to be analyzed and then distributed, this information. So communication plays a key role, really bringing the message to the key politicians, to those who are actually designing our policy frameworks. They must know about the economic advantages of renewable energies. And for that, we need to build alliances across parties, across political parties, across sectors. So very much this connecting aspect that was already highlighted before. And obviously, yeah, it's not only the politicians in the parliament sitting, but from the regions where 100% renewable energy is already reality, we see that citizens' engagement and the engagement of investors is really key in order to make this transition a reality. So Denmark, Germany are just two examples where the citizens really took the lead and brought the investment that was needed. So yeah, one of the tools that we want to use to overcome the barrier is this campaign, where we do all that, what I just said. And we figured that providing the information is not enough. So what we do with this campaign and with the work that we're doing is connecting and expanding the coalition of the willing that is already achieving or is striving for 100% renewable energy. We want to inspire change by visualizing and advocating this 100% renewable energy future. We strengthen platforms for exchanging knowledge. Sometimes we create new platforms because in some countries that just simply is not a topic yet. So we just establish that platforms. We work in alliances to actually share this knowledge, and we provide very concrete tools for success and to improve the understanding among the key stakeholders that need to know this in order to overcome the barriers. So I have some slides where I show how this works in practice and how this campaign is doing its work at the moment, and maybe it inspires you to engage with us in that, because that's the whole point of it. So on this slide you see some of the logos from the organizations that are already involved in this campaign, that are already working on branding 100% as the new normal. So creating this brand of 100% and making sure that people understand it's not only about bringing renewable energy in the energy mix, it's about the full and holistic transition. So we're very happy to work with stakeholders from different fields, really, from civil society, from research institutions, from industry associations. And I think this mix and this diversity of stakeholders really makes it unique and brings in a very important aspect for this 100% message, because obviously a 100% message is very diverse in all parts of the world. So here you see some of our pictures from from workshops, from parliamentary hearings, from conferences where we brought together policymakers in the different constituencies to talk about 100% renewable energy and ask very critical and sometimes controversial questions. Is it even possible? How is it possible? And what does that mean for the people? What does that mean for the industry? So we did that in different contexts, and we continue that work with a workshop in Morocco in November. And obviously this is only possible with this alliance that I just showed in my previous slides, where different organizations are bringing together different people. But it's not only about bringing people together in conference halls, but actually making sure that they also see and feel how 100% renewable energy can be a future, or is already reality today and can be realized for them in the future. So we're bringing them to different places where this is already implemented, following the motto of seeing is believing, where people really get engaged with local experts and get inspired to take it home. Some of the tools are also, as I said, providing knowledge about these concrete case studies. We do that through publications and through our online platform, go100re.net, where you see a map, a global map with all pioneers, and I've had a screenshot in this presentation. This is work in progress, and we're happy to also welcome some of your communities, suggestions, submissions, if we have not covered that in our map yet. We have an e-library, and obviously this all serves the purpose of bringing people together and exchanging knowledge in face-to-face meetings as well. So finally, talking about how can we make this a global movement, basically I would say it is a global movement, and with all the communities around the world, islands, even national governments taking a stand on that. It is a global movement, but it still needs a lot of push from all of us and from all of our networks. And in order to make it a reality for the world, there are 5 key policy recommendations that we have derived from the analysis. So one is make energy efficiency a top priority. This is very obvious maybe for us here in this discussion, but among policymakers this is still neglected because often this is not one ministry, one body, one authority working on this, but there are actually different people working on different topics that hardly ever talk. So we need to integrate this energy efficiency as a top priority in our renewable energy and energy production. Same goes for the electrifying the heating and transport sector, where we obviously need to work on much stronger. Also here we have a lack of communication between different stakeholders, between the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Energy, for example. So also here we obviously have a lot to learn. There's still a lot of research going on, but we can see this happening around the world, and I think the key message is it is possible, even though we are facing challenges, but it is possible, and we can learn from those who have tried it. Third policy recommendation is maximizing the opportunities for citizen participation and the development of new business models, opening up the market, not strengthening monopolies that have been there for decades or even longer. Sometimes the new business models are making the real transition, and it's not the old utilities who are the actors of the future. That goes hand in hand with educating and informing citizens and businesses and communicating this. And finally, adopting an integrated approach to fiscal, economic, and energy policies. My final slide, I want to thank you for your patience, for listening, and I'm looking forward to all your questions now in the webinar, but also if you are thinking about, engaging in this, feel free to contact us through Twitter, Facebook, email, whatever. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Anna. And next we will hear from Nicholas Wagner, who will present IRENA's Remap initiative, which explores how accelerated renewable energy deployment can meet an objective of doubling the share of renewable energy in total final energy by 2030. So I will pass the floor to Nicholas. You have the floor, Nicholas. Hi, Nicholas. You appear to be muted. I think you just need to unmute yourself, please.
I am unmuted. So can you hear me now?
Thank you very much.
So good morning. My name is Nicholas Wagner. I'm an analyst here at the International Renewable Energy Agency in Bonn, Germany. I will be presenting today to you a project that we have called Remap 2030. It's a renewable energy roadmap for the year 2030 that we've engaged in here at IRENA for over 2 years. I won't go into detail about what IRENA is, but I will say that we actually have quite a number of initiatives, and Remap is just one of many. And we also have 3 core programmatic areas, and I work here in Bonn at the Innovation and Technology Center. But we also have 2 very active teams that are located in Abu Dhabi. What is Remap? Remap is a roadmap focused on doubling the share of renewable energy and total final energy by 2030. It's closely aligned with the Sustainable Energy for All initiative of the United Nations, which has 3 interlinked objectives. 1 is the doubling objective. 2 is to increase the rate of energy efficiency improvement, to double that rate by 2030. And the 3rd is to enable universal access to modern energy services by 2030. So it'll essentially to eliminate energy poverty. So Remap is not a study in 100% renewables. It is, however, a study in an accelerated scenario where we would actually achieve significantly higher levels of deployment of renewables over what is expected in business as usual. As was mentioned by our panelists earlier, I think it's very necessary to start thinking about 100% renewable systems. And it's good that we're having this discussion, and I commend all the panelists and Stephanie here at IRENA to organizing this webinar so we can start to think about these things. Remap, as I mentioned, won't directly address this, but I think, and I can't specifically comment on what it implies for 100% renewable systems. Our time frame is also limited to 2030, but I can say that what we present in this analysis sets the world on a trajectory that I think could imply very high shares of renewables, perhaps 100% by 2050. The analysis is very comprehensive, and as was mentioned by Anna, it's important, I think, when understanding the implications of higher shares of renewable energy to understand things like costs and what are the benefits and what is the technology mix implied. So that's what I will be presenting to you today. relatively quickly, so I should move on. But to give you an idea, this is not a desktop study. This is actually a collaborative effort with IRENA and with our member countries. In the first round of countries, we had 26 countries. We've now expanded this to around 37 countries. So this is a process in which we collaborate directly with these countries to understand sort of energy system developments over the next 15 or 20 years and try to identify accelerated renewable scenarios where we could compile all of these and then make a conclusion as to where we're heading. What does this imply for this doubling objective that we have? It's ongoing, and it's ongoing. To give you an idea of where we start more or less in total final energy at 18% in 2010. This is our base year. Our objective is to double this, which is actually to achieve 36%. The difficulty here is that of this 18%, more or less half of that renewable energy is traditional uses of biomass. So this is dung, this is residues, wood fuel used in mainly poor countries or developing countries for heating and cooking purposes. This has to be phased out entirely. So really what we're doing is we're starting from 9% and we're trying to achieve 36% share. Now if you include energy system growth, so growth in energy consumption, which is expected to more or less increase by 50% by 2030, you actually have not just a doubling of the share, you have a tripling of the share of modern renewables, and you have over a quadrupling of the share in absolute terms of renewable energy, modern renewable energy. How is this achieved? Well, it's achieved actually through a nexus of options. So Remap is also a study that looks at these other two SC4 and linked objectives, and what we show is that based on the reference case, business as usual by 2030, little is actually achieved. We achieve more or less 21% modern renewables, up from 14, 15%, 9% today. We achieve 14% modern renewables. If you include traditional uses of biomass in 2030, you achieve 21%. Remap replaces all of that traditional use of biomass and sees a significant deployment of modern renewables. However, with that, you only achieve roughly 30% renewables. So to achieve the 36%, which is the doubling, we have to assume also the doubling of the rate of energy efficiency, which gets us closer to that 36%. It's by no means an endpoint. We have something called RE+, which includes additional structural change, modal shifts, electrification of end-use sectors, industry relocation, accelerated early retirement, and some assumptions on breakthrough technologies that could actually increase that share even further. But what's important to take away from this is it's not just about deploying renewable energy, it's about enabling modern services for energy in developing countries. It's about assuming a much higher rate of energy efficiency improvement going forward. It's also important to note that it's not just about one or two countries. It really needs to be a global effort. And though Remap initially focused on 26 countries, representing roughly 75% of world energy consumption, and now we're expanding that to 37 countries, the mix of countries is very diverse. It's not just developed or developing or the poorest countries. It's a mix of lighthouses like Denmark, the large energy consumers like the US and China, leaders like Brazil, but also countries like Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Australia. So it's important to note that it's a collaborative effort that needs to be done on a worldwide scale. No one country, for instance, can achieve this goal by itself or groups of countries. Every country needs to be engaged. What does it imply in the year 2030? Well, we've actually explored several different cases. What I'm presenting to you today is the primary Remap case. We also have an electrification case and more of a uniform deployment case, which assumes sort of more or less equal responsibility amongst countries. But to give you an idea of the mix, roughly 1/3 of renewable energy at that point will be provided in the power sector. This will be led still by hydropower, but with very large contributions of wind, and increasing contributions of solar PV or CSP. Transport fuels in the form of biofuel with significant advanced biofuel production will represent roughly a sixth, and then half of energy consumption will still be in the form of heat. This is space heating, water heating in buildings, but also importantly process heat applications in industry for low, medium, and high temperature heat. The important takeaway from this and from one of the Remap findings is that in order to achieve these higher levels of deployment in the end-use sectors, so outside of the power sector for heating, so the end-use sectors for heating and transport applications, you would need to assume quite a lot of use of biomass. And so there's a large, if you read the report, there's a large section that focuses on the biomass question. We've actually also released a working paper very recently that looks at this issue in much more detail and depth. It's important to note that we assume only sustainable uses of biomass that don't compete with food needs or livestock feed needs. So this is sustainably sourced biomass that's in addition to the needs for the population for nutrition. We have, however, like I mentioned, explored other scenarios or cases that include electrification in the end use, so essentially much higher deployment of electrification technologies, so modal shifts in transport, electric vehicles, heat pump applications in industry, some industry relocation to where you have cheap and abundant renewable power. And to give you an idea, this table that I presented here gives you some of the assumptions that this implies in terms of deployment of these electrification technologies and the power technologies that are then necessary to provide power. So it's a significant growth in the deployment, for instance, of wind and solar PV to levels that are very, very high, much higher than growth rates that we see currently. What does the normal remap case imply for the power sector? Well, it implies significant growth. It implies around 1,600 gigawatts of onshore and offshore wind from around 320 today. It implies over 1,200 gigawatts of solar PV, up from maybe 150 today. These are growth rates of 70 to 80 gigawatts a year starting tomorrow, which will imply, if that's not achieved tomorrow, an acceleration of that growth rate into the 2020s. Certainly something that's possible, but not something that we're achieving currently as on a business as usual. You can see here the IEA 2018 projections and the gray dot. What we anticipate is the reference case in 2030, which given very recent developments may be a bit low, particularly for solar PV, but nonetheless you can see the gap in many of these between the square and the triangle between the reference case and Remap 2030. So a lot that needs to still be done alone in the power sector, not to mention there's significant opportunity but also challenges outside of the power sector. So Remap also shows that the use of solar thermal technologies, not just for the built environment, so heating applications in residential and commercial buildings, but also in industry. Roughly 30% of solar thermal deployment in Remap 2030 is actually for low temperature process heat applications in industry. In total, we would have to increase tenfold the area of solar thermal collectors to achieve the solar thermal share that we envision. You'd have to have a significant uptake alone, not in the electrification scenario, but just in the Remap 2030 scenario for electric vehicles. Biofuels, we have very optimistic assumptions in order to see that biofuel number again met largely through advanced biofuels, but we have to see more or less a six-fold increase in biofuel production. It's also important to note that I think somewhere we're actually heading where we've identified in Remap, but it seems the market trends tend to be pointing in, is that electric 2- and 3-wheelers, particularly in Asia, seem to be taking off in large quantities. I think it's very possible even by the end of this decade or sometime early next decade there'll be 500 million on the road. And there's breakthrough technologies. I added some of these actually as the other panelists were speaking, just to mention that there are emerging technologies that look very interesting, like community-based solar cooking in Africa, for instance, some of the district heating or low-temperature process heat applications for heat pumps, for instance, Denmark, power to gas, and of course this question, what will happen with sort of ocean, wave, and tidal power generation. Remap implies in 2030 a renewable energy share in the power sector of 44%. It's up from about 20% today. The next largest share would be actually in the building sector, with roughly a third of fuels. So the building sector, the transport sector, and the industry sector exclude electricity. So this is sort of fuel use. So this would be natural gas, coal, biomass use for heating or for transport fuel applications. So this implies 35% in the building sector, 20% in industry, including solar thermals and geothermal heat, as I mentioned, and the transport sector with 15%. So significant growth from today, which is the blue boxes, and also significant growth over what is expected in business as usual in the orange boxes. On a country level, it implies significant growth in most countries. And you can see here a breakdown of the renewable energy share and total final energy for various countries. Denmark obviously taking the lead with countries like Brazil, France, and Germany. Interestingly, India is quite high, but that's because of the share of traditional biomass use. You actually see the share goes down. And of course, as you go down, you see the average is set around 30%, which is our 30% number before you take into the effects of energy efficiency. Other cases include, as I mentioned, Remap E and Remap U. Remap U actually implies a higher renewable energy share because every country has to reach more or less 30%. Remap E also implies a slightly higher renewable energy share. In the power sector, some countries, power sector has the highest renewable energy penetration, as I mentioned on the previous slide. Some countries approach over 80% renewable power. Of course, in Brazil and Ecuador, this is due to hydroelectricity. But in Denmark, this is largely due to wind power. Some countries like Canada, UK, Germany, this is a mix of at least in Canada's case, of hydroelectric and wind. In UK, Germany, this is largely solar and wind. And the average of over 40%. What's interesting is that the US can achieve, for instance, 40%. China can achieve also approaching 40%. It's important to understand what the cost implications of this are. So we broke this down on technology level. Without going into too much detail, the important number to look at is actually the far right. So the incremental system cost for the total. This implies an incremental system cost of 133 billion US dollars without taking into account any effects such as externalities. So this actually may sound like a lot, but in energy terms, per kilowatt hour, it's very little. It's, I believe, around 2.5 US dollars a gigajoule. It's under 1 cent a kilowatt hour increase. However, it's important to note that this implies no internalization of the negative externalities associated with fossil fuel combustion. And so the blue bar shows you what the range is when you account for benefits related to better human health and less environmental degradation. And if you factor in these accounts, you actually result in net savings to the economy as a whole. You can think of it that way, of between 123 and almost $700 billion a year by 2030. To see this level of renewable energy deployment in Remap, you need to have an incremental investment, so an additional investment of around $265 billion per year. This is not a cost. This is an investment need. There would be subsidies, provided you don't internalize some of those negative externalities through something like a carbon tax, for instance. But there would be a need to subsidize some of these technologies to make them competitive in the marketplace. But the important takeaway is what this higher level renewable energy would imply for the economy, for instance. And this is that blue bar on the far right of that savings of between 120 and 700 billion per year. There's also important CO2 implications, greenhouse gas implications. And what we show is that renewables can contribute significantly, particularly because of the high deployment in the power sector, which is very carbon intensive. We can see that you can have savings of almost 9 gigatons per year by 2030. If you couple that with avoided CO2 emissions resulting from higher energy efficiency, you achieve an additional more or less 7 gigatons. If you combine those together, by 2030, you've reduced global CO2 emissions from energy-related services, not land use change, but just energy-related services, to around 25 gigatons. Depending on the acceleration of that reduction after 2030, it's conceivable then that you would be on a pathway towards around 10 or 12 gigatons by 2050, which is, I think, the generally accepted number that would achieve the 450 ppm scenario, the 2 degrees limit for temperature increase. To recap, what are some of the benefits? Well, reduced health-related costs would be around 200 billion per year. You would actually have a net increase of around 1 million jobs in 2030. So this high level of deployment not only save money, but it would also result in higher employment. Demand for fossil fuels would decrease, therefore in many countries increasing energy security. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, you would actually have a significant reduction in CO2. Those together, I think, make a very compelling case for this higher share of renewables. It shows that the doubling is technically achievable with existing technologies. We don't need to wait until some breakthrough. This can be done with technologies that exist today. It is affordable. It's affordable almost without externalities, but it actually saves money when you account for externalities, including health and environment. There's macroeconomic benefits, so jobs, increased economic activities. It sets the world on a pathway towards meeting our climate goals and avoiding catastrophic climate change. However, some important takeaways, obviously, is that action is needed. Significant action is needed, not just in power, but also the end-use sectors. Unless an electrification regime is very aggressively attacked, I would say that you would need to have, there's a very strong emphasis on biomass. We have policy recommendations, a whole policy segment. I won't go into that, but that is available in the report if you'd like to look at some of the suggestions for ways in which this Remap 2030 can be achieved. What are some of the next steps? We're actually releasing comprehensive country reports that go into much greater depth about what these accelerated renewable scenarios mean for certain countries. That also looks at some of the system-related effects of this high level of renewable energy deployment. These will be released for the 5 countries that you see there. We're expanding our country scope to include new countries. These are 11 new countries that bring our total up to 37. We're starting 2 action teams. One focused on the transport sector, which has the lowest share of renewables. So it's a third of all energy consumption. So it's a sector that needs particular attention. And also there's actually a synergy, which many people don't understand, between renewable energy and energy efficiency. So through the deployment of renewable energy, you actually increase energy efficiency, at least if it's measured from an energy intensity of GDP standpoint, which is the SE for all indicator. And Remap is engaged in international target setting, international agenda setting, and the climate process. So if you'd like more information, you're welcome to email me or visit irena.org/remap. And I look forward to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And now we will open the floor for questions. And so our first question, actually I might answer a few questions that came up quickly. that can be addressed by me. So the first one was that someone was looking for the report that Stefan had mentioned about statistics on wind possibilities from Stanford University, and I can see if we can get that report and share it with everyone who's participating today through the IRENA community, and we will provide that link to following the webinar. And the other question that I'll answer is someone was wondering if there is an online map for 100% renewable energy communities, and yes, there is, and we will also provide that link for you. Okay, and now I will hand the floor for this question to Anna. The participant is saying large shares of renewable energy in the energy mix are only possible through significant investments in energy storage. What role do you see for hydrogen in this framework? And they're referring to hydrogen as a way to increase industrial consumption next to renewable energy production sites in order to avoid excess supply to the grid.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Nicholas, for your great presentation. And yeah, on this specific question on storage, indeed we need to invest in storage, and we cannot work around it, and we cannot push that to the next decade. This is something that research institutions, private sector, governments really need to take seriously, working on energy storage for renewable energy to achieve 100% renewable energy. However, I do see that technology already exists today, and that we can transform the renewable sources that we have into electricity for different sectors. We can store it. Hydrogen was mentioned. Batteries are there. We have cases like El Hierro, where they use water pump storage systems. Obviously, you need the right geographical conditions for that. Specifically on hydrogen, I think hydrogen will be surely a key element for 100% renewable energy, especially because it's very flexible, and you can use it specifically in the transport sector, which I also highlighted in my presentation. It's very important. And it offers the great opportunity to store the excess power on site and make use of it for something else. So yes, I very much agree. Adding to that, I still think that we have a great opportunity to make our system, our infrastructure, much more efficient, much smarter, if you want to use that word, where we can work by integrating the transport, heating, and power sector more effectively. We can use the renewable energy much more efficiently and reduce the need for storage a lot. And we see that happening in Denmark already, and as I said, in other places as well. So I think it's not in one or only question, and I think storage is not a barrier, or the lack of storage is not a barrier, but it's a great opportunity and can even speed up this transition. Maybe I can quickly add to one of the questions that you answered, Steph. On the map, I showed a screenshot in my first slide of my presentation of the map that we are doing, mapping 100% renewable energy communities and regions. So it's on go100re.net. You find a map, and we're happy to also have contributions from you.
Great, thank you so much, Anna. And the next question I might give to Pia. We have someone asking, Brian asking, if there are any 100% renewable energy regions in Africa that you are aware of.
Thank you, Ryan, for this question. Unfortunately, I am personally not aware of African regions that have committed politically to achieve 100% renewable energy. I know that there are several initiatives going on, but they haven't been yet covered by our map. I think this is a very interesting case, though, to consider for the global 100% campaign and map. So yes.
Great. I think I can. We'll give the floor to Anna first, and then go to Stefan.
Yes, thank you. Well, Cape Verde is one example from Africa. I know that it's an island and it's a special case. That's usually the case with these pioneers. But Cape Verde is a great example where you can see that this is possible in a very different environment than the typical example of Denmark. And what Cape Verde really shows is it has an economic benefit, and that Cape Verde and the people in Cape Verde, the citizens, really benefit from lower prices, from secure and stable energy access in that region. So they are working with different other countries and local governments in Africa to share their knowledge, and hopefully we see more examples on the African continent then.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna, and I'll open the floor to Stefan as well.
Yeah, so Africa, I think this is an important question indeed, and we have to be aware, of course, that indeed in Africa there is a large share of people that has no access to modern energy services, in particular to electricity. So in many cases, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, renewable energy is the only option to go for, because simply the alternative option would often be diesel generation is just far too expensive, much more expensive than wind or solar. There are some programs now, some of them supported by international organizations like the World Bank, like in Senegal. One of our members, company, is involved in electrifying, I think it is like 30 villages in Senegal based on small wind and hydro. So they are mainly building microgrids, and that is based on renewable energy. This approach is very promising. The main question there is not whether to go for renewables or not. I think this is quite clear in most of these unelectrified areas, but how to overcome the finance problem. That's a general problem, and especially in the case of renewable energy, although you have almost no operation cost, you have high upfront investment cost. So we are now also involved in discussing how we can make sure that the necessary financial resources are available, because the people, you can see this from mobile phone penetration rates in Africa, is much, much higher than electrification rate in many countries, that we can maybe learn from this. People are able to pay maybe every month a small amount, but they may not be able to pay $1,000, $2,000 for a solar home system. So this is where we can see the main challenge. But yes, there is a lot happening in African countries, and of course in Northern Africa in particular, like Morocco up to Egypt. I think it's also quite obvious, as far as these countries don't have fossil resources, that they invest a lot now in particular wind. I wanted to mention that we have this Friday in Bonn, we have a conference on financing renewable energy in developing countries, where we want to make sure that from the, especially like the Green Climate Fund, there is money will be made available for such investment to overcome this barrier. Very briefly, I wanted to say something to the hydrogen because I think this question was much related to hydrogen. I would like to kind of put up some criteria how to integrate renewables. We should have some criteria, and I think that the first kind of level of priority should be a smart combination of the technologies Anna mentioned. Wind and hydro is a very good combination. If you have wind and hydro combination, you may not need any kind of storage. Second is maybe demand side management, which could also be done. These options are usually also based on proven technologies cheaper. And then the third option would be storage. And within this storage, of course, hydrogen also has a role to play. Although hydrogen at this point of time is still a bit costly, so we have to see how the costs will come down. Probably at this point of time would not be the first or second, but rather the third option. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Stefan. And the next question, I think maybe we will give to Anna. We have Janardana wondering what are some of the best policy instruments that have been used in these 100% renewable energy regions, or just in general for implementing renewable energy technologies. So she would like your perspective on different renewable energy policies.
Yes, thank you. As already mentioned several times, one of the key policies that have been implemented in those communities, countries, regions where 100% is reality is that they made use of the great potential of energy efficiency. So from two ways. One is by reducing consumption of electricity or heat, so using less energy, and the rest can then be powered by renewable sources. And the other way of increasing energy efficiency is by making the infrastructure more efficient, so using the excess power from wind, not only just unleashing it in the air, but actually making use for district heating, for example, or feeding it into the transport sector. So energy efficiency is a key component, and the second key component is that the policy framework enabled new stakeholders to engage in the energy policy environment, in the energy sector, in the energy market. So citizens could invest in renewable energy, and by that not being only a consumer of energy, but actually also be a producer. And citizens can come together in energy cooperatives and also sell their electricity that they produce in their own wind farm or in their solar installation that they own. They sell that to the grid, or they sell that to other consumers, and by that become a part of the energy market. So that opens up new business models, that opens up new investment opportunities, and obviously through that you increase the acceptance, you increase the involvement of people in the new energy sector, and through that you have a much more sustainable approach to that, and you unleash the potential of new investments, and you don't rely only on the old investment and only work with limited funding, but you actually increase private investment from citizens. So these are the two key factors that I would add to that.
Great, thank you so much, Anna. The next question, I think we'll go to Pia. We have someone wondering what the prospects are for off-grid renewable energy development around the world, and in particular in those countries where electricity transmission or distribution lines are not well developed.
Thanks for this question. I can basically add some thoughts on that, looking, for instance, to India. Here, the prospect is, of course, also to focus on fossil fuels, unfortunately, in the next decades, and also nuclear power is in some, especially in the maybe the national governmental paradigm, seen as a way to address climate change. But I also see a strong growing awareness and also action that highlights the great potential that lies in renewable energies in order to alleviate poverty and to also decrease inequality in terms of consumption of energy sources and distribution of its negative ecological impacts. So I think renewable energy shows really good prospects in these countries in order to have a more democratic and use-oriented and also maybe rural development-focused approach. These examples are very broad, and there are many new technologies evolving in order to electrify homes and to electrify irrigation pumps in the agricultural sector, but also to think of small-scale industries. So, as Stefan has highlighted before, I think yes, there is high potential, and many of these regions and rural regions are moving to that direction, but I think it's a really big question and challenge still to find good funding sources. I think this is what I can add to this question.
Great, thank you so much, Pia. I think we only, unfortunately, have time for one more question, but I do want to highlight that we have the IRENA community open for further discussion on this 100 renewable energy discussion. So I will provide a link to all of the participants where you'll be able to find our presentation, a recording of this webinar along with all of the presentations. So if you would like to ask our panelists further questions, that would be the place to do it. And this last question I will direct to Stefan, and it's from Marty, wondering how you reply to the argument by people that 100% renewable energy is not compatible with an industrialized society.
Yeah, I would like to ask, I now don't remember the name, but I would like to ask the person who asked this question, why should it not be possible if we are capable of supplying industrialized countries based on very, very limited fossil and also nuclear resources? If you have a look at the resources that are available, then there are some estimates that what we get from the sun in form of direct solar radiation, also wind, also hydropower is of course indirect solar energy, then estimates that is 10 to 15,000 times as much as mankind uses on a commercial basis. So it is not a matter of scarcity of resources. There is much, much more renewable energy on our planet than what we need. I tried to present you the example of wind power, and as again, wind power is just a share of what solar power would have. It is of course a matter of the technologies and then using the right technology to provide this energy in a form that is used for industrialized countries. That is possible. We can see it. Actually, even you can see today already that sometimes the big industries, they go to countries or areas where they have a lot of hydropower available, because hydropower is very cheap today. So like aluminium factories, they go to places like maybe Tasmania in south of Australia, or also in, we know that in Iceland there are such discussions. So actually renewable energy is, when you look at it in a long term, rather a very good argument for long-term stable power prices and availability of power. You imagine a country, let's say Germany, that at the moment largely depends on importing, let's say, fossil fuel from Arab countries, from Russia. We all know the discussion currently that this is a bit risky because that supply may not happen in the future, aside from risk of depletion. And by the way, Germany at the moment spends 100 billion around euro per year for importing such resources. Keeping this money in the country would of course rather again increase industrial activities, and that is for a highly industrial country like Germany. So imagine what that would mean for many other countries, poorer countries, which spend a much higher share in proportion of their resources for importing resources now, energy resources. Thank you.
Very much, Stefan. And now we will ask that you just participate in a very, very short survey to help us with improving our webinar series. So we'll have 3 questions, and you will see a pop-up come up on your screen. You just have to answer. So the first question is, overall, the webinar met my expectations. Okay, and the second question was, the webinar provided useful information. Thank you. And the last question here is, the webinar presenters were effective. Great, thank you very much. And I see now that the first question may not have been answered, so I apologize for that. But we will continue on because we do not want to keep you too long. So I would just like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, for sharing that very useful information, and to thank all of our participants for taking the time to listen and to engage with us. Again, I just want to apologize that we weren't able to get through all of the questions that we received today, but we would like to speak with you more, and we hope to hear from you. And we would also like to invite you to connect with IRENA both on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. We will have recordings of all of our webinars on the community, as I mentioned, and also on LinkedIn. So thank you very much, and wish you all a great day. Thanks very much.